Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Grenzi, and welcome to another hopefully engaging session of Q&A with John Worthington. How you doing today, John?
I'm wonderful.
Fantastic.
Sitting here enjoying the view.
Your view's better than mine, but I'll be back down there eventually.
Okay.
So today I have a pretty specific topic to go about, and it's called programming and metaprogramming in the human biocomputer. In fact, that's John C. Lilly's book from the mid-'60s, where I read through that, and we've done a class on that. And it's led to a lot of really interesting conversations, and I'd like to pick up on some of those.
Oh, well, all right. Let's do that.
So I think just to get out of the gate here, a lot of folks misunderstand some of what Lilly was trying to say there. With regards to comparing the human biocomputer to a silicon biocomputer. You want to unpack that for a quick sec?
Well, I don't know really which one of these various things you're pointing at, but we can't put something in our mouth and chew on it and spit it, or we don't have a typewriter or a keyboard that we can type things in or anything. So even though the computers work in the same way, they don't necessarily have all the same features. Let's put it that way. Although the structure is the same, there are a lot more variations on the theme in the human biocomputer, simply because it's a much bigger computer than anything that we know about, and it's a lot more complicated, and it has the advantage of being able to grow new circuitry, because when it remembers something, it grows new synapses. When it changes the memory a little bit, and it always is changing the memory. Every new event changes the memory somewhat. So yeah, it's a pretty complicated thing, but the structure is still the same.
Well, it is, right?
About that. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And even recently I was reading something that was talking about the cognitive understanding that he demonstrated in the 60s through his own experimentation. Really was way more accurate than folks thought. And they're starting to come around to that.
Yeah, no, it was the guy was ahead of his time without a doubt, and you know, his life had to be really quite lonely. I mean, he could talk to Tony about some of the stuff, and they did talk about it and everything.
Tony?
Tony's his wife. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Right.
Okay, and they had a good relationship. I mean, if she said something, I mean, he was paying attention to what she was really saying, even though if you and I were to listen to it, we would miss it. He knew what she was talking about. I remember sitting at lunch with him one day, and he said, you know, we were talking about something, and Tony made it a rather seemed like off the mark statement, and he stopped. He said, "Wait a second, what do you mean?" And when she explained what she meant, it wasn't off the mark at all, but she had marked it so that he could go pull it out for her. So they had a great relationship, I think.
Wow.
And so he wasn't, and too, you know, when he had that accident, PCP, going down the Mulholland Drive on his bike, and he had an accident,
right?
She came along and saved his butt. You know, she gave him CPR and kept him alive.
Yeah, he was really hurt. I remember reading about that.
He was hurt badly. Yeah, but she kept him up. She kept him alive. So you know, they had a good relationship.
And I think it's fair to mention also that the isolation tank, more commonly known nowadays as floating, was actually really, first of all, he invented it.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that he and I think Timothy Leary may have collaborated on that somewhat back in the Bethesda Naval Hospital days.
Yeah.
And so I think that they did some collaboration on that, but as we all know, Leary he thought that you could see God if you took acid.
He did.
I don't know that he ever saw God, but he thought that at the time.
Yeah.
And so when that program came to a close, Lilly moved the tanks and everything down to Bermuda so he could also visit with the dolphins, because dolphins have they have bigger brains than we do.
30% bigger. The whole 1/3.
Yeah, that's a big brain, bigger than ours. Elephants have even bigger brains, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, really, the only reason I'm bringing it up is I know that that gave him an advantage. I mean, he coupled it with LSD, which, I'm not sitting here proposing people are doing, but,
No.
in the tank, you can access all of the same functionality just by some regular floating that he did by combining it with LSD.
It's not that you can, that you're going to.
Right. No choice in the matter, actually.
None. If you float, you're going to access those same areas. We don't have ways to talk about it like he did. I mean, he had the neuroscience to talk about it.
Right.
Okay, and we regular normal human beings, we don't have that. Okay, so we have to develop ways for us to talk about, which is what we try to do in program theory, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it just makes it easier for us to deal with those kinds of things. Okay, if we have a language to talk about it with, then it helps us out a whole lot. You gonna move me around some more?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm gonna make it too much.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay. Well, I mean, it's funny. I've probably floated a couple hundred hours over the last 5 to 10 years. Right. And,
right.
and I have people ask me, well, what's the point? Why do you do that? What's the purpose of it? And, really, first of all, you got to experience it, and you got to experience it more than once before you can really.
I think you need to log in excess of 10 to 20 hours before you can begin to understand what the hell you're doing.
I would think that's true.
I don't see how that works for anybody other than that way.
Right.
You've got to actually put some time in the tank. You do.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, physiologically, right? What's happening is, your mind doesn't need to focus any energy on balance, right? It doesn't need to focus any energy on eyesight
or gravity.
Gravity, temperature control, right?
Nothing.
None of these things.
Nope.
So what happens, right? 15, 20 minutes into the tank.
You've got lots of extra circuitry that you usually don't have available. That circuitry say, hey, I ain't doing nothing at the moment. Anybody need help? I hear it saying that in my mind every time. No, I don't.
No, that's just a hallucination, John. That's not, that's not real.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. I got it.
But right. But you're totally right. So now all this energy returns to your deliberate conscious mind. All of a sudden,
I don't know that it's conscious mind there.
Okay, fair enough.
That's something that I'm just not convinced that that's true. There's an awareness of what's going on, certainly, but I'm not sure that it's connected to consciousness as we normally experience consciousness.
That's
okay.
Fair.
I've struggled with this one for a lot of years, and I have a lot of trouble saying that consciousness is even involved with this, with floating. Okay, consciousness as we know it, it's more like the awareness of a dream. And it's like Lilly actually referred to that too. He said that there's a self-meta programmer. And he says that that's where you believe things are real. And he says that thing that's the part of your thinking that does things like arrange for you to pay attention to a thing, or arrange for you to consider something, or to look at something, or to hear something, because it's working all of the time, and it doesn't talk to itself, but it's aware.
Right.
There's lots of instances of that awareness, which includes things such as the connection, the other site connection that tells us where space is, where we are in space, I should say.
Right.
We don't see anything, but we can't actually say I see that, because it's not part of the conscious thought processes that sees, right?
Right.
But it doesn't mean we're not aware of it, because we'll duck. If something's there, most of the time we'll duck. If it's just a little bitty thing, we'll bang right into it. Oh, that hurt, Jesus. Okay, but most of the time we'll duck. If it's down in this, like in this kind of space, we'll duck. We'll get out of the way.
Yeah.
But it's not because we see it.
Right.
That one took me a while to really understand, but it's true.
Yeah, there was that article or that video that was talking about that gentleman who had damage.
Yes.
And he couldn't see out of one eye, but he could.
Right.
He was aware, even though he wasn't seeing out of that eye.
Yeah, that made me start thinking about it, actually, and so I started noticing that I did the same thing. There's a vine here in the house. I duck all the time, and I never see it, because usually when I duck, it's early in the morning when I'm turning lights off.
Oh, right.
So, but I duck nonetheless because it's there, and as I got it that I know it's there or what, but yeah, I do a duck. So, I think I'm aware of where it is in space. I think my brain is aware.
Well, this ties in together with the next thing I was going to kind of mention, which is the different states that you're going through, right?
Yes.
Let's take a quick moment to kind of illustrate that journey down into Delta.
Okay. All right. Okay, look, here's the thing with this one. There's these different kinds of brainwave frequencies that we can access, okay? And it's like they're always working, and so it's really hard for me to define how it is we access them. All right, but I'm aware that people do this. Okay, it's like they move their awareness from one level down to another level, down to another level.
Over here.
Yeah. Okay. Now, to begin with, there's normally when we talk back and forth with people, we talk in what we could call a beta rhythm or something. It's kind of like this rhythm. Okay, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything particular other than that's the rhythm we speak in, and it corresponds to beta brainwave frequencies. So one could assume, I think, that beta brainwave frequencies and normal consciousness probably go together somehow. Yeah. How, I don't know, and I don't really care. I know that people who talk that way, talk normal people without any education in floating and so forth, will talk in beta rhythms. Some people talk in alpha rhythms, which is about half of that. Okay, something like this. Okay, and alpha rhythms is where, like for instance, Silva Mind Control. They use the alpha rhythms as a marker for the programs that they wanted you to pay attention to. Then there's a theta resonance or rhythm, if you like, which is half of alpha. It's a lot slower. Okay, it's like this, and things like est, they pretty much pushed on that theta idea. Now, in the tank, I think that you get down into delta. Now, most people say, "Oh, you can't get there." And I don't know whether most people can't get there or whether they've never floated or what, but you get down way down deep into those dream states that you have every night. The first 45 minutes of dreaming, the first dream cycle is usually in delta, they say. Okay, and so I think that you can check that out and find that to be true. There's lots of studies on that one, I think, and so I think you can find that to be true. But we do access delta in a dream state, apparently, especially the first dream state of the evening, and that's pretty much where people go when they float, is into that first dream state. And so for us here at Artes Mentales, what we do in our float center here, what we do is we give people a chance to do two dream cycles. We give them an hour and a half so they can go through 2 dream cycles and kind of get done with whatever it is they're dreaming about when they're floating. Okay, and so well, who knows what they're dreaming about? And it's like you don't really want to interrupt somebody in the middle of a dream. You don't know where they are. And so you don't want to pull them back from that, especially if they're working on it. So many times, if we're not really busy, we'll let people get out on their own whenever they get done with their whatever they're doing in the tank. So that's just easier on them, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure it's more effective for whatever they're working on.
And delta runs really slow too. It's like that. It runs really, really slow.
Which is how you feel when you get out of the tank. I mean, anyone that's floated will know.
That's how you feel about things. That's right.
You need to sit down for a little while and have a cup of tea.
Yeah, that's what you need to do. Don't drive your car, please.
Not right away.
You're not ready. Yeah, we don't want you to go get in your car and go because you're not paying attention yet. Sorry. Anyway, that I think that's a prerequisite for marking what is normally called altered states of consciousness. I think that's a misnomer. I don't think that's a good name for what it is that we experience. It's maybe altered states of awareness, perhaps would be more nearly accurate. Right. Okay, that's my opinion. People refer to it as the altered states of consciousness, and okay, that makes sense. But I don't think it's really an accurate statement.
Yeah, I think it could be more precise for sure, and that's certainly something that was important with regards to programming. In general, is precision of language, because anywhere that the mind can wiggle around in interpretation, it will.
Yes, it will.
And this is important for, and let's tie this all together now. Why is floating? Why are we talking about floating? Why are we talking about brainwaves? Why are we talking? How's that lead into programming? Right? What's the relationship here? There is one.
Right.
And let's be honest, the relationship is the mind is operating on the programs that you've put in there.
Yeah, and this is the thing is that people don't realize that they have written programs because it's not something that's done consciously. It's something that's done by the self-meta programmer.
I was like, John, what are you talking about? I don't remember doing this.
Yeah. Well, nobody ever does because we don't do it consciously. We just don't.
Okay, so now let's take that apart a little bit. So,
okay.
When you're using a rewrite, when you're going through a rewrite, which we've talked about a little bit earlier, which has 11 steps, and it basically starts with a goal and ends up with substance, right?
Yes.
Which is really the tied to the ears, I believe, and is really the overall impact of what it is that you are. What is this?
Yes, it's something that it's the whole set of what we have learned, actually.
Okay. So where does the programming and your reference earlier of the self-meta programmer is really where this all starts to get some traction?
Right. It's right. You kind of have to take that apart and think about it carefully. It's because it's not immediately obvious because it's in use. Okay.
Right.
Like the eyes at the moment. Okay. You can't see them. They're in use.
Great analogy. Yeah.
Okay. So look. The self-meta programmer is an entity in the thinking machinery. I can't really define all of the parameters of that entity, but it exists. Okay, and it does things in the biocomputer. It can be likened, if you'd like, to like an operating system in a silicon-based computer.
Yep.
You could think about it that way and could it would start kind of giving you an idea of how to consider it, at least. Okay. It doesn't answer anything really, but it gives you a way to consider it at the very least. So anyway, that's one way to start thinking about the self-meta program. It's like the operating system in your computer, and it every now and then needs an upgrade.
And a special point here is everybody has some level of capacity, right?
Everybody has used it since the moment they were born. Actually, it's been operational since that moment. Yeah.
Right.
As soon as you started learning things, the self-meta programmer was operational.
It had to be doing its thing, otherwise you'd still be a baby lying on your back going cuckoo gaga. Right.
But it's like you don't ever really notice that that's what it is. You kind of do is when we're kids, we kind of notice that because the self-meta programmer is what we have. The only thing we have available when we're little,
right.
Because we're just not old enough yet to have developed the other parts of that thing, huh? Okay. We haven't been able to develop that other part of the thinking machinery, if you follow me.
Yeah, right. What other parts haven't been developed? What do you mean? You're saying we start.
Even though the baby brain is developing some theta and alpha and beta rhythms or brainwave frequencies, it doesn't mean that it's all that useful yet, because we don't have enough experience to use it, really. I mean, we have to go through the process of gaining the experience to learn about it, right? Okay, so it's like we start off probably in those, for the most part, in those delta areas of our brain, of our thinking, not necessarily in our brain, but in our thinking, because we have to develop who we are. Okay, as children, we have to do that. We have to say, okay, well, I like this, I don't like that. I like vanilla, I don't like chocolate. Whatever those things are. What are they based on? Who knows?
So you're building this thinking framework literally day out and day out. This is what you're doing.
Right. I think so. Yeah. You can observe that in children. I think you can see that in your kids, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean, there's certain thresholds. I have an 11-year-old daughter and I have an 8-year-old son, and they have different capacities.
Right. Right. And not just simply because of their ages, but because of what they can. I mean, there's this whole set of that that they're filling in. It's not just that, just not part of it. It's like your 11-year-old daughter is right at the very end of her alpha years. Okay, she's probably beginning to think more nearly rationally. Okay.
Right.
Okay, not rationally, but she's starting to say, okay, how do you think about this then? If you don't like this, then how? I want to know. Please explain me to it.
Yeah.
And your 8-year-old is probably still in the middle of just enjoying whatever he's doing. He's just wherever he is.
110%.
Right, which is a real alpha type of thing, which goes between 7.5 and 12, 12.5 or 13, 14, whatever you want, somewhere in there, where people begin to change from alpha or feelings or the apps that are in there that they're writing for themselves into the whole space of being a rational or reasonable entity. Okay, whatever that means. And reasonable is not the same for everybody. It just isn't.
Right.
It's a program it's an app that we write apparently, and everybody uses it differently. It doesn't work the same way in anybody. As far as it works similarly in most people, but not the same. It's something else I've noticed.
For sure.
Your reasoning doesn't work like mine. Well, why not?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that everybody has to learn going through a program theory class, right, is that everybody's operating system, to use a term we just threw around, is unique to themselves.
Yep, it is.
It contains elements from their family, right, from their culture, from their own experiences, right. I mean,
and as we talk about in program theory, there are two schools of thought, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's two schools of where thought originates. Okay. One of the schools is that it's only through experience, and the other one is that it's something outside of the experience that brings us to where we go.
Right. Those are the two prevalent theories, right? It's either 100% contained or 100% not contained.
Right.
But why do we have to choose like that?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I don't think that either one of them are completely accurate. Right. I think that there's a lot of things that we do that are related to experience, and we make a lot of mistakes with experience because when we're young, we don't have experience. And I think that we make a lot of mistakes as an adult in the other than experience set, because we don't really have a way of talking about that other than experience set. And so that one of the things that we hope that we can accomplish and when people begin to look through program theory is that they can identify what is their experiential set, so that they can separate that experiential set from what is not their experiential set. And once they can do that, boy, they seem to blossom in a different way. I
was just going to say it tends to accelerate the changes because it's kind of a subtext throughout the entire class, and it's a 10-week? I think it's a 10-week class, maybe even 11 weeks.
Yeah, maybe.
But the subcontext the whole time is you need to know the difference, right, between what you actually know and everything else.
Well, I think you have to make a differentiation between what you know, what you think, and what you believe. Right. Okay.
Right. Which might sound not important, but it's actually very important.
It's really important because you see, here's the thing: you have to know something for it to be information, and knowledge requires three parts. It requires a source, it requires the experience itself, and it also requires that somebody else can come along and say, that was the experience.
Right. Somebody else that knows how to do it. Like, oh yeah, you just did that. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. I don't care whether you're playing baseball or you're working in a factory. When you do, you have to go through those three steps in order to learn how to do the job properly.
Yeah.
Okay. You just have to. Now, you may have to do it over and over and over and over so that you can do it well, but nonetheless, that's how we learn things. We do it over and over and over until we can do it well, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So let's see. Where else do we want to take this?
Well, you might want to consider that there are assumptions that we cover in program
26,
theories.
I believe, 29.
37, I think.
Oh, it's been a while since I went through them all. 37.
Yeah.
So now these are fun. I think we start them in the second or third session,
Yeah. Second,
and second,
third maybe.
and they build on each other, right? So the first one is
Right.
a fairly accessible idea, right?
Yeah. And what these are these are assumptions that we can make, that everybody can check for themselves about how we think.
Right.
You know, about what the brain does. Okay, they're just, okay, here it does this, doesn't it? It does this too, doesn't it? It does this too, doesn't it? It does this too, right? And so you add all those up, and I didn't think about adding those all up. Yeah, it does all those things, and it's like that. Usually is kind of instructive for folks, because we haven't thought about it doing all those things.
Well, yeah, I mean, these ideas are being handed down to us by a neuroscientist, right?
Right.
That had the language and the detail to understand some of what he was trying to say to people.
Yep.
And he was fantastic with his use of language.
Yes, he was. Well, he was also very careful with it. I mean, he was careful to say it as precisely as he could possibly say it. Okay, and that makes it hard to read sometimes. Okay, and he presented his ideas the way he wanted to present them. He didn't present them in an order that would necessarily make sense to you or I, but it made sense to him. Okay, and so he had his reasons for doing it. If you think about his reasons for how he presented them, then you say, okay, I see, and they make sense that way. It's like you need to really read the glossary of his book first. Of course, you might want to do that with any book anyway, so you know what the hell the words they're using means.
His book more than most, perhaps.
Really.
I'll be honest. I read the book before the class, right? And I mean, I'm a pretty good reader, but I mean, I didn't even pick up 3% of what this guy was trying to say. No. And then we started to go over it in the class, and we really broke it down and spent the time to explore the boundaries and parameters of what he was trying to say. And then things started to add up.
Yeah. You really do need to stop and pay attention carefully, because the man wasn't talking. I mean, he wasn't whistling Dixie. He was talking, and he wasn't high. He may have been high, but he wasn't high. He had all his faculties and senses about him. He did all the time. And so when he wrote about these things, I mean, you know, he was writing about things that he had observed, things he'd taken notes on, things that he had seen, things that he'd gone back and checked again and again. You know, so
and again and again and again.
Yeah.
He really explored these things out in a way that guaranteed that he was able to explain them to somebody else.
And he was really quite willing to say, okay, look, I've made some real goofy mistakes.
Right.
like the whole thing that, and this is a wonderful lesson, but he said, he makes a statement. He says the key is no key. And he said, "Oh, that's cute." And then he explains why he says that. Right? He said, that in his life he got to a place because he was in the tank and he was doing these drugs. And he said, well, he had keys to everything. He actually had a key ring that weighed like pounds. Okay. And he said, this is goofy that I'm carrying all these damn keys around and I've got everything locked away and so forth, and I'm not sharing anything. I'm not, it doesn't do any good to lock it away. And so then he decided what he's going to do was he was going to leave it all open. Well, that didn't work out well either. There were some of those things that he was keeping under lock and key that suddenly developed wings and the need to go wandering about the world. And so he couldn't really lay his hands on it when he went back for them. So he decided that he had to rethink all that. And so what he began to understand was that the physical reality and the internal reality were different. They weren't the same. They weren't the same reality. That what goes on in the internal reality is not necessarily what goes on in the external reality.
That's what led to him breaking that apart. Oh, I get it. Okay,
yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, because he had to say, okay, look, the key is that there's no key here. Okay, there's not one thing that you're going to learn about this. You're going to learn it all if you're going to figure it out. You really have to take it and use it. It's not just a matter of saying, "Oh, I understand it because I got the key right here.
Right.
I'm going to tell you what's going on here. I see the key."
There's no translation component, right? Like just to make it all understandable.
No, there's not, because it's all new to us. Okay, the reason it's new is because we've never had this comparison before. Before the mid '60s, we didn't have a way of comparing computers. We were really very fortunate as humanity that Lilly had both the ability to examine how computers worked and how the brain worked. And he was in a unique position to be able to do both of those things. And that's what gave rise to this understanding of the human biocomputer as a computer. Now, Does it do other things? Yes, it does. Okay. But let's start with what we can understand. And what we can understand is that we can understand that it works like a biocomputer, and it has these 4 component parts. It has programs, it has meta programs, it has self meta programs, and it has the logical part or the detailed carryings out of the applications, which we really usually realize in a computer on our what we see on our screen.
Right. The level that comes right to your face.
Yeah, that's what happens what happens in the biocomputer as well. What we talk about sometimes has a great deal of depth to it, and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it really depends. It really depends on where that communication originates. I think that's a way of talking about. I don't know if that's completely accurate, but I think it's a way of talking about, or at least pointing at the event.
Okay, I mean, thinking about the classes that I've taken and taught around program theory, I think that's accurate, because there are certain things that get in and you don't realize they got in, right? And they start to impact places that aren't actually adjacent to it, for lack of a better word, right?
I mean, you need to give an illustration of that one, I think, because people said, what?
Yeah,
I just heard everybody's listening to this say, what?
All right. Well, for folks that have been watching some of these series, a couple nights ago, you and I were speaking with Terry, and Terry was battling with a perspective that she had around something that had gone on in her life. And this perspective was informed by a belief that she developed as a very, very young human, right? And it was relatively unexamined.
Right.
For decades.
Talked about, but not examined.
Right. Unexamined for decades. And on the show, on our video the other night, you and I were talking to her, and something got through.
Yes. Yeah, you could see her body movements to know that it got through. I mean,
it was visual. Her tone of voice changed. The look in her eyes changed. I mean, everything changed. Yeah. So to your point, trying to tie that together to give an example, that hit her at a belief level, and it has the potential from here on to trickle through all sorts.
It's not a matter of it has the potential. It will. Yeah, it will trickle through. And it's like, think about this. Let's say that the only thing that occurred for Terry at that moment was to say, okay, you need to put you need to put this color blue in your color palette.
Right. You just had red before, but you need to add blue.
Or you had red and yellow, but now let's add a red to it. Okay, it'll make it easier for you to see the differentiation of colors. Okay, if you add red to this, because see that now you can make an orange and a purple and so forth. See, you can do that, right?
Right.
But that's all that happened really, and so that she has to now recalculate all of her thinking concerning coloring and programming. Let's say.
So as she goes about her life, this is going to be happening.
Yeah. It's taken her these many years to have all these experiences that support this mistake let's say this hole in her bucket that she's had. Okay. And so the thing is that it's not going to be from the night till in the morning for her to be done with that. It's not a Samantha thing where she can just wiggle her nose and it's over, right? I mean, she's going to have to do some work on that. She's going to run into it. It's, oh man, I'm doing that thing again.
But she's going to notice it, John. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's what happens when we make these fundamental shifts, right? All of a sudden, you're going to go about your life doing everything you normally did, but it's going to keep going ding, 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 and you're going to be like.
And the only thing that you'll do is improve it. I mean, you're not going to make it worse. You can only improve it because if it's making it worse, you're going to say, get out of here. But if it's making you better, that other part of your brain will say, that's making you better.
Keep going.
You know that. You know that, right? That your communication is a little better now, right?
Well, you do know
your harmony is a little better. Yeah, you're actually communicating information. Look, you're being empathetic. Look at that. Is this what you really want to do? Cool. That's it.
And that's exactly it. I mean, so this is where the external reality is starting to line up better with the internal reality, and the results of your life are starting to change for the ideally in the direction that you want them to, right?
Right. One of the problems that you're referring to here that almost everybody has is that it's really difficult to see the difference between the internal and external reality for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. I know I struggled with that for sure.
Okay, because you think, well, what's the difference? I'm thinking about this, and there the thing is. Okay, it looks like it's
clearly,
all the same.
John, everyone sees things the way I do. Clearly.
Oh yeah.
So
I know. I struggle with that one, boy. It's like, doesn't everybody want to work the way I went to work? I mean, how can they not? Are they alive? They hadn't grown up on the farm. They grew up watching Mr. Rogers or something.
I did.
I didn't grow up with that.
Right.
Mr. Rogers lived down the road.
And he had great cows and horses.
Yeah, that's right. Well, not horses. He did have some good cows.
Oh, okay. All right. So anyway, all right, this is good. This is a little bit of a primer. I didn't want to go too deep on this program theory stuff, but you and I are going to pick this up in another session, and we're going to pull it apart a little bit more detail and show behind the scenes what's going on.
Yeah, this is really a kind of extensive subject matter, I think. Really.
Yeah.
It really kind of it makes us have to stop and think about a lot of different things. We're not being good or bad or right or wrong about it. We just have a lot of trouble seeing through all this stuff, right? Because we don't have a language. I keep saying that, but it's true. We simply don't have a way of talking about these things, and so we really need a way. It's last night I did the first session of the Dyad class, okay, and in that session it talks about there's a quote from Einstein that says, if we're going to understand the world, we need a substantially new way of thinking about things and describing things. Okay, we really do. And I think that it's real. I think that really applies to not just the world of quantum physics or quantum theory or any of that stuff, or string theory or the theory of everything, and whatever those things are. Right? You actually have to stop and say, okay, I have to describe this world differently than what I ever have before. Okay,
if you're going to get more, like if you're going to improve something, right? You're going to have to.
Well, yeah. If you're going to do the same old,
right.
Excuse me. If you're going to do the same old, it won't make any difference.
Right.
Okay. You don't change anything. Why change it? You just do the same old thing. Right. However, if you're saying, I'm tired of having the same old response to everything. Okay. It's not going to work as well. Okay. It just isn't. So what we want to do is we want to have people have the option of deciding whether they want to do something differently or not. Okay, and program theory gives them the options. Okay, it gives them a way to talk about what options are available. It gives them a way of choosing what options are available, etc. We don't have to live our lives with the programming we got as children. Mom and Dad loved us. Grandpa and Grandma loved us, and the global village we lived in loved us, etc.
And they did their best.
They did what they knew was best. Yes, they did. They didn't shirk or anything else. They did everything they could, but they didn't have a language to define what it is that the human brain does. Yeah. They didn't have that comparison of computer. It wasn't available.
Yeah. It wasn't, right.
Okay, the majority of our contemporaries, of our peers, do not have that. Even though they know what the computer is, they can't compare it to the human brain still, which is the reason why we're sitting here doing this.
That's exactly
talking
right.
about this stuff, right? Trying to say, okay, people, this is something you might want to really pay attention to. What do you say?
Yeah, and so it's such a valid point, though, to talk about providing possibilities, right, for yourself, because if a person were going to combine a program theory class with a rewrite class at the same time, wow, it's like a turbocharge, because I was learning all about these different thought spaces I needed to go through to make something real in my life. At the same time, I was learning how to create possibilities in my life.
Right. And by the way, the idea of possibilities is related directly to quantum theory or quantum physics, right?
It sure is, which I look forward to diving into some of those conversations.
Because it's related directly the possibility is a related subject, and you
It
have,
sure
you have to
is.
consider about it.
I
You have
mean,
to consider how it works.
entanglement, double slit theory. I mean, just to name two right off the top of my head, that'll be fun to talk about
Yep.
when we get there.
Yep, it is.
Well, let's
All
park
right.
it there then.
Yeah,
I think
okay,
that's a good
great.
spot.
Why not?
Awesome.
Okay, thanks, Paul. How about
Yeah.
we'll see you the next time? How about that?
Soon enough, I'm sure. Great talking with
Okay.
you, and have a good day.
Goodbye, everybody.